Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling IRA, so Inflation Reduction Act, legislative quote unquote triumph for Dem leadership supports party role as dissent-containment vessel. So, this is something I'm calling, harking back to a piece I wrote about 2 years ago. It was part of a three-part series about the American party landscape, which essentially has germinated into this video cast, Politics 2100, this channel here on YouTube. And I'm trying to decode, among other things, though it's not hard, I don't think, to decode it, the Inflation Reduction Act and the uses of that for the Democratic Party, and also just in general its uses for the entire, you could call it, hegemonic political system in the United States, where the Democratic Party, as I wrote in 2020, functions as a containment vessel for discontent, for dissent. And so in a popular discontent, so is the Republican Party to some degree, but the Democratic Party is more streamlined, or not so streamlined, but is more built for this game of containing people's demands upon government, limiting them, corralling them, making them manageable for the, you could say, neoliberal elite, the donor class, the corporate elite, who essentially run both major political parties for the most part. And, and that containment function is very obvious in this IRA, so Inflation Reduction Act. And we are being asked, among other things, to celebrate that. It's being called, a major triumph. And also in my particular area of focus, climate policy, it's being hailed as a major breakthrough and as the most important climate policy ever in the United States. And that is a very, very low bar, because there has been really no significant climate policy in the United States on a national level at all. So it being hailed as so great is, in some sense, means it's not necessarily that great. In fact, it's actually dangerous if we consider it to be sufficient or really even highly effective. It may be effective in some areas in rolling out certain market segments of clean technology, but it also helps the fossil fuel industry continue to drill and mine, for fossil fuels, and there's a lot of, as I say, a poison pill in it, as I've said in a previous video. So, but its political function is exactly, and the way it's being used now, it corresponds exactly to this idea of a containment vessel and of creating a sham caring. So or it's also the good cop role. So after writing the containment vessel piece, I since then have talked about U.S. politics as being this good cop, bad cop routine, in which the Democrats play the good cops. And that still means that they're cops. It still means that they're trying to coerce, or manage people and the population for a somewhat hidden agenda, or not explicitly democratic agenda. It's not an agenda that people have signed up for. but it's an agenda of the donor class, of the ruling elite, the ruling class of the United States. And anyway, and some of that agenda is in using the Democratic Party and using the democratic politics overall, or the democracy overall, to get people to attach hopes and attach their demands to that system while not really fulfilling those demands, or frustrating them to a degree, or managing them, or giving them a ersatz or replacement or substitute satisfaction for the satisfaction that they're asking for from government, the protections they're asking from government. In the case of climate, protections from climate chaos, from extreme heating, so forth and so on, from the extreme weather that is coming our way and has come our way already. So anyway, and that protection is obviously a long-term project. It's not something that's going to, any single act is not going to create that protection, but it is a long project. It will require a lengthy 10-year, 15-year Green New Deal that is many times the size of what the IRA is in terms of dollar expenditure, and also in terms of effectiveness. Excuse me. So anyway, the IRA is being hailed as this great. Now, just not only in the area of climate, so it fits almost every aspect of it. So there's also the drug, the medical portion of it, the drug cost reduction portion of it. That only kicks in 2026, and it only applies to 10 drugs. And so hailing it as this great relief for the American people, and even a defeat for the pharmaceutical industry, is premature, to say the least, if not downright deceptive, because they have another 4 years to raise prices on these 10 drugs. Plus, they have thousands of other drugs which are not even affected. So some may say, well, this creates a precedent for negotiating drug prices. Okay, but it would need to be radically expanded way beyond the dimensions of the IRA, and there's no talk of that in at least the celebratory treatment of it. Now, just quick preface here. I think, given the composition of the Democratic Party leadership and the Congress and so forth and so on, that passing the IRA is right now better than nothing. But it is only better than nothing as a placeholder for real policies that do the things that the IRA says it's going to do. So it's a sketch of, and even a very partial sketch, a whisper of a sketch of what government should be doing for the American people in a bunch of areas: climate, drug pricing, so forth and so on, and tax reform, all these things. So anyway, and we're being asked by the media and so forth and so on to shut up about exactly the things I'm talking about the deficiencies of the IRA, and just to celebrate and clap Democrats on the back. Now, if I were campaigning as a Democrat right now, I would want to call attention to the fact that Democrats have passed this thing and Republicans haven't. And actually, to his credit, Joe Biden has changed course. And I probably should do another video about this. Not a big long video, but just point out that Biden seems to have realized that his embrace of bipartisanship ideology is causing his party to become neutered as a political force, and not only just neutered, but weakened as a political force, and he does have somewhere beliefs in democracy and in the common person and so forth and so on, filtered through 50 years of neoliberal crap, and ideas about, and also relationships he has with major donors, so forth and so on, that are, he bounces back and forth between these very abstract beliefs, which I think are the basis for Bernie Sanders' quote unquote friendship with him. And maybe it's a real sincere friendship, but anyway, these beliefs in sort of, and also labor, also his labor department is the best in a long, long time, which is not saying a lot, but it's, again, better than his previous boss, Obama, and he is more pro-labor than Obama. So, and also this announcement about, anyway, after the signing of the IRA, he did do politics in the sense that he pointed out the Republicans had nothing to do with this bill. And so he didn't give them the leg up that he and Nancy Pelosi and Schumer and so forth and so on had been giving them for so long. So I think there is a healthy, self-preservative, impulse in some of these politicians that wasn't noticeable before, in realizing that their submission to the bipartisanship ideology and also taking a one-down position to the Republicans on everything was really, really hurting them and potentially, basically, inviting fascism into the door. They may not use those words, they may not think in those terms, but is inviting fascism, opening the door for fascism to take over in the United States. So, anyway, GOP fascism. So, anyway, this triumph, this IRA for the Democrats, yes, it makes sense for politicians, including the progressive politicians that I support, and the maybe 10, 15, 10 maybe and change members of Congress currently, and then some that are probably going to be elected November, so maybe there'll be even 15 or 20 of them in the next Congress. But anyway, that group should also be using this as a way to campaign for themselves and draw a contrast with the Republicans, and also show their constituents that they're doing something for them, even though I think they should be very, very clear about how little they're doing for them because of the structure of the party, and that they are constrained in terms of what they really want to do. And there's some Democratic leaders, and there's some fans in the base of the fans of Joe Biden and of Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris who would object strenuously to the idea that one has a critical thought at all about these leaders. But that's silly. That's ridiculous, in my opinion. But they have a cult-like, or they assume a similar cult-like relationship as the MAGA base does to Trump, or at least they assume they seem to feel this intense loyalty to these figures who are not really very good Democrats, in my opinion, and not very good politicians overall. So, so anyway, the IRA then provides, though, for the Democratic leadership and for the corporate Democratic Party, the part of the party that sees its role as supporting corporate entities and lobbyists and so forth and so on. It provides for them a cover to continue doing the work of those lobbies, for those lobbyists, for those industries, while also claiming to the American people that they're doing something for them, even though what they're doing for the American people is little crumbs that fall off the table. And So it really is, and this creates this game of the good cop, bad cop game, or kabuki theater, or whatever it is, where the sham caring, the sham progressivism, you could say, of the Democratic Party fools some people into thinking that they're really doing stuff. Now, I'm not one of these people who say, well, because of that, I will turn to the other party, to the Republicans, for real help, or for to whip the Democratic Party into shape. There are people who think that. I think we need to change our electoral laws so that we can have third parties, and so we can have real ideological diversity in our Congress and so forth and so on, and also we can have smaller parties that form coalitions with each other to create governments. And that kind of proportional representation, or there's an organization called Fair Vote, among other things. So that kind of a system would allow for a real competition rather than simply going back and forth between those two parties. So the GOP is now lost, probably forever. I would say 99% probability they're lost forever as a reasonable counterpart to the Democratic Party. There is one candidate in Vermont who is an anti-war candidate that won the Republican at-large Congress seat, or didn't win the seat, but won the Republican nomination. He's anti-war. He called himself of the left. So, I mean, but that's very, very unusual. And there is a progressive on the other side, a Democratic progressive, who I would want to support more than him, even though I think his anti-war stance is preferable, or is a good addition to the public discussion. But anyway, this role of being this sort of sham left party that really is either center or center right in its actual policies is very damaging to for the American people, because we can't get really strong policies in. We can get really strong social welfare policies, strong climate policies, because they are so diluted, and they're being used pretty much as this sort of peacock feathers, so to speak, or this display, this a fancy display of virtue signaling for the Democratic Party that they are carrying, and so forth and so on. When and just so that's kind of skin deep, when their actual policies are very close to the Republican parties in many ways. So anyway, bottom line, it's good the IRA was passed. Democratic politicians should use it, but they should also, I think, create a more sophisticated discourse about it and really talk about how we need a Green New Deal, we need Medicare for all, neither of which is being made possible by the IRA, and for that matter, by the leadership that crafted this. Okay, and then finally, and Cenk Uygur had a very good segment today about this. I mean, the appeasement of basically after Biden signed this bill, he handed the pen over to Joe Manchin. Now, Joe Manchin had, he's the right-wing Democrat who has put a lot of the climate poison into this bill, who was blocking the bigger Build Back Better agenda that Biden said he wanted. That sort of, anyway, that really, it appears apparently that was part of, again, this display, this virtue signaling, containment, bringing people in, baiting people in, containing dissent, and then delivering to them basically a corporate-friendly bill. Anyway, him handing this pen over to Manchin symbolizes either submission to Manchin. I mean, Cenk had some talked about apes, how apes hand, things to the alpha, the beta apes hand them to the alpha. So essentially endorsing Manchin's role and showing Biden to be a weak leader, and also the fact that probably Biden agrees more with Manchin than he does with almost, most other Democrats, and Manchin is at the far right of the Democratic Party. So, into the, just, and that's ways, in a way that's quite left of center. I mean, quite right of center. So, anyway, and he's legislated that way in the past. He's the father of the bankruptcy bill. He's done lots of damage as a senator, and he has very little to be proud of there, measured from the point of view of the welfare of the American people, or for that matter, welfare of other peoples around the world. I mean, there are some upsides to. I don't want to say he's 100% the worst in the world. There are some things that he's done, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, his Labor Department, a few other things that he's done that show values that are recognizably democratic, but he does it in a way that is entirely signed off by the donor class. So he's not a fighter. He's not wanting to fight the powerful people. Okay. But anyway, I hope this video had, in terms of a description of the positioning of the IRA, was interesting to you. Please like it. If you thought it had something to offer, please share your thoughts in the comments section. And also, please subscribe to this channel if you want more content from Politics 2100. See you then.